All right, let's see if they censor my mic tonight. Mic check, mic check. What's up, YouTube? What's up, TikTok? All right, let's get the party started. All right, we'll see. Nope, let's do this. Put that over there. Put this right here. Oh, I got a lot of tabs open. What is that? Let's exit that. Let's exit that. Let's exit that. Let's exit that. And let's exit that. There we go. Perfect. All right. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? YouTube. Let's see. YouTube. YouTube. All right. What's up, everybody? What states are we from? What states are we from? What states are we from? Y'all, I'm almost done with another book. Almost. Almost done with another book. Boom. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? What states are we from? What states? What states? Did y'all know that mail was a maritime term? Mail. Like I receive mail from the post office. It means it referred to letters and packages transported by sea, known as packet boats, involving terms like sea mail or ship letters, or even mail carried by naval vessels. All right. Well, this is fun. I forgot I found a book on liens. I haven't read it yet. I need to read it. Let me see if I can search some stuff real quick. Oops. Coming along, coming along. What's up, everybody? What states are we from? What states are we from? Chat for YouTube. Ooh, maybe I'll read some stuff. Let's see. What are we going to talk about tonight? New York, Georgia's in the house. Let's read some land patent stuff. Let's do that. I don't do that often. Didn't I post a case today? I did not post a case today. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Watch this. Let me see if I have it. Watch this. Watch this. I think I have to sneeze. Boom. All right, Florida. Florida. Who is this? This is the United States Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court said that a state cannot impose a tax on land grants on lands granted with an exemption from taxation or take away a corporate franchise. That's the United States Supreme Court talking about Florida. Let me see. Let me see. What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? Let's see. Let's read some land patent stuff. Land patent stuff. Land patent stuff. They said a patent is a it is documentary evidence having the dignity of a record of the existence of the title. It is a of the United States. As a deed, its operation is that of a it passes only the title the government has. It passes they write this so wrong. They say it passes as only the only title the government has. Uh, and it is on the date of the patent. It passes to the patentee all interests of the United States, whatever it may have been in everything connected with the source, and in fact, in everything embraced within the meaning of the term. They said it sets at rest any question of sovereign ownership. They said whoever has the land has sovereign ownership. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? What's up? Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Just trying to say it. I mean, it's not up to me either. People don't. People they show it to who they want to show it to. I don't control who it goes to. This ain't my platform, so I do what I can. Any questions? Any questions? No problem. Download all the books, download all the PDFs, dictionary. What states are we from? What states? Somebody said Georgia, somebody New York. Let's see here. This is the Supreme Court of California. They said by international law, private rights are unaffected by conquest. They said the conqueror seizes the public property while private individuals are permitted to retain theirs. They said whether the property belonged to a natural person or to an artificial, they said it doesn't make a difference whether it was for a natural person or an artificial person. Excuse me, tested rights in real estate have been respected by all civilized nations ever since the time of the conquest of England by William Norman. They said they cited this book on international law. They said the last example in Europe of such a conquest was that of England by William of Normandy. I tell y'all this all the time that everything changed in ancient England um, when William the Conqueror took over. And study that period. Let me read this first. So this law book says that concerning international law, the last example of Europe of such a conquest was that of England by William of Normandy. Since that period, among the civilized nations of Christendom, conquest, when confirmed by a treaty of peace, has been followed by no general or partial transmutation of landed property. They say property belonging to the government of the vanquished and passes to the victorious state, which also takes the place of the former sovereign in respect to the domain. In other respects, private rights are unaffected by conquest. So they said, whenever somebody takes over another nation, they are supposed to only take over the public property, right? let's just say hypothetically in their day, a castle, you know, the military, the arsenal, the public property of that previous government, right? And then they cite another. They say the conqueror, any conqueror, according to the law of nations, uh, seizes possessions of the state, public property, while private individuals are permitted to retain them. And they cite an older law book that says this is in ancient English, but it says it is against one sovereign that another makes war and not against the quiet subject. A conqueror lays his hands on the possessions of the state, what belongs to the public. Private persons are permitted to retain theirs. That's why you get to our Constitution and they say you can't take stuff without just compensation of private property, right? So you see that being implemented, and that would be a part of the process that you can seize, levy, and do everything related to public property. You can't do that related to private because private property does not belong to you. And if you want it, you have to pay for it. But what I was saying was in ancient England, when William took over England, okay, well, they didn't care nothing about him taking over England. They continued to fight it out. They would years after he took over England, would go band together. The Anglo-Saxons would band together and take out different, platoons and militias, and that went on forever against William the Conqueror. You can watch documentaries on William the Conqueror and how he took over England and the effects of taking over England, and you will see that the Anglo-Saxon people were still 100% against William the Conqueror taking over England. I call him William of Normandy taking over England. All right, well, that was fun. Let's see here. This is the United States Supreme Court. They said the land system of the United States is vested in the executive branch of the government. The officers of the executive branch are charged with the disposal of public domain, and they are required to be given through their actions to individuals, and the courts of justice are to never interfere. So they said that the Bureau of Land Management issues land patents or land grants, and that takes that land out of the public domain, which would be beyond the reach of the courts of justice. They said they don't lawfully have a way to create a case on it. So every day you just see them breaking the law, just breaking the law, just breaking the law. They don't care. Let's see, let's see. Let me go oldest to newest. They said nothing passes a perfect title to public land but a land patent. What happens? Hypothetically, you buy or acquire a piece of land, and that land is in the public domain until you take it out by way of a land patent. So when you get the land patent or you're issued a land patent or a land grant, that is that piece or plot of land that you have sent to them out of the public domain. Because remember, we just read William the Conqueror had absolute dominion over public property. And when that land is not in the public domain, well, they don't have a way to attach to it. Well, a corporation doesn't have a way to attach to it. Does that make sense? So they said that nothing passes a perfect title to public land, but a land patent. A land patent would be proof that it is no longer in the public domain, subject to corporations and legal fictions. They said we consider it to be true. They say when they look over their books, that plot of land will not be there as under public property. They said nothing passes a perfect title to public lands, but a land patent. We consider it to be true that nothing but a patent passes as a perfect and consummate title. They said to hold that a party could recover against the land patent, one who resided the perfect title, this proposition of law cannot be maintained. They said a grant of land was the law upon the books of the state. They said although no patent had been issued nor any notice of the withdrawal of land received, it was held that the title had been passed out of the United States by grant. So you either have a land grant or you get the land back. And both of those actions would take that land out of the public domain. So they said when the United States federal government has parted with the title by a patent, the title so granted cannot be impaired. It says the patent of the government issued upon the land department is unassailable. What does unassailable mean? Unassailable, unable to be attacked, questioned, or that's what unassailable means. That's a nasty word. Unassailable. They said the disposal of public domain cannot be interfered with, or can such legislation deprive the grantees of the United States of the possession and enjoyment of the property granted by reason of the right in the transfer of title. When transferred, the right to possess and enjoy the land would amount to the denial of the power of disposal in Congress. They said a land patent is the highest evidence of title against the government and all claiming under junior patents or title. They said the rights of the principles of right and justice upon the doctrine of estoppel and whatever this Latin phrase is, rest are acceptable to municipal corporations. All right. Maybe some wild people in the comments, man. All right. Supreme Court of Maryland, actually, the Supreme Court of California said concerning Maryland that affecting lands in Pennsylvania that the tenure is allodial and not feudal. And in the Supreme Court of Maryland, it is said that after the Revolution, land in the state, Maryland, became allodial, subject to no tenure. What is a land patent? A patent to land is highest evidence of title, something upon which its holder can rely for peace and security in his possession. It is conclusive evidence of title against the United States and all the world. I have this. They have, what's up, everybody? What states are you from? What states are you from? Let's Is that noise coming from your mic? Possibly my neighbors are playing really loud music if that's let me see. The American uh, law of, I guess I don't have it. I thought I had it. Oh well, I guess I don't have it. All right. They said the Supreme Court said that the issue is the most accredited type of conveyance known to our law. It said land patents, the issuing of land patents is the most accredited type of conveyance known to our law. They said the land patent operates as the deed of the government. It passes as the only title the government has. I cited that actual book that it came from. Here we go. Supreme Court talking about California. They said California government cannot assert its public easement over the petitioner's property without any mention of such easement in the federal land patent that the property owner has. They said regardless of the fact that the claim is asserted by the state in its sovereign capacity. I read this all the time. The government is not sovereign. Only the people can be sovereign. And corporation cannot be sovereign. The purpose of the corporation is to be sued. So when they speak on sovereignty, they're never talking about us, or they're never talking about themselves. So they say, even if you think in your sovereign capacity you can override the land patent that the property owner has. They said if that interest was not in the land patent, then there's nothing you can do with the guy who has the land patent. I already read that. Let's see. They said this thing called the land patent is the title derived from the government and involves the entire transfer of the ownership of the soil. It is purely allodial. Who is this? The United States Supreme Court said that Congress has the sole power to declare the dignity and effect of titles emanating from the United States. They said the whole legislation of the government in reference to public land declares the land patent to be superior and conclusive evidence of the legal title. It's the same conversation we have with the cars. What is the proof of ownership of the car? The manufacturer's certificate of origin. Okay, well, what is the proof of ownership of land? The land patent. They said this whole legislation in reference to legislation declares the land patent to be the superior and conclusive evidence of the legal ti if you didn't get the manufacturer's certificate of origin to the car at the time of purchase, okay, well, that's not your car to do with what you want. And because it's not your car and you don't have evidence that it's your car, well, then if the cop pulls you over and that car's information is on his computer, well, he can presume to do whatever he wants because in reality, it's the state's car, not your car. Because just like the land patent takes that land out of the public domain, well, the same way your car would not end up on the cop's computer. They say they try to go after people with land patents, and then they'll fake sell the land, and then whoever buys the tax sale tries to insure it and tries to mortgage it, and they can't because it's not when the mortgage company wants to find the land in the public domain registry, they can't. Or when the insurance company wants to know where the land is held in the public domain, they don't have a way to find it because it's not there. Right? So there's a difference between stuff that show up on the computer and stuff that don't show up on the computer. Let's see here. Here we go. Here's a nasty case. Here's a nasty case. The Supreme Court of California said that being a part of the freehold, that's a Magna Carta word, a patent issued in the usual form by the United States, the state cannot prohibit another. This is the Supreme Court of Michigan. I need to, matter of fact, I need to tag. Uh, I need to tag Michigan and California on here. What is this? This is land patent, but it's also California and Michigan. Um, they said being a freehold, the Supreme Court said being a part of the freehold, a patent issued by the United States, the state government cannot prevent them. And then the Supreme Court of Michigan said that patents issued by the United States are unassailable in an action law. That word, assailable, unassailable, unable to be questioned, attacked, or defeated. Unassailable. Mississippi Supreme Court on this. There we go. Let's see here. Actually, I do have Mississippi tagged on here. All right. The Supreme Court of Mississippi said that both cases are sustained as valid title. The land patent evidence that all preliminary steps have been taken to justify its existence, its issuance. Montana, the Supreme Court of Montana. I read this a couple days ago. They said that the land patent is the highest possible evidence of title. A patent for public land is issued, such patent is not open to collateral attack. You think fighting taxes is a fight, right? You get in court over these land patent things. They say it's the hardest thing you'll ever fight for. They say you can get the land patent and be in court. Nope. You think the government breaking the law about your traffic with his land stuff? Yeah, nasty. The Supreme Court of Nebraska, let me tell you Nebraska real quick. Yeah, you think your little traffic stop is a problem. Yeah, wait till they drag you in there over that. Yeah, not paying taxes. I don't wanna hear that. Here's something. They say you can read all these cases, they'll still act like they sold stuff and tax it. And then the dude who buys it will try to insure it, and he'll come back to the courts and say, "Well, I can't actually pay the insurance on this land or this house that's on this because they want this magical number that they say they can't find." And then the people who try to take a mortgage out on the land, they say they can't mortgage it because it's not in the public domain for them to find to try to make a collateral attack. Oh, that's nasty. They said the Supreme Court of Nebraska said the doctrine is established by numerous decisions of the Supreme Court of the United States that the land patent cannot be collaterally. The patent might have been lawfully issued, and that is against collateral attack. And that patent is the evidence of such determination and is unassailable collaterally. They say it again. The land patent to be superior as the evidence of legal title. Oh, here we go. Who is this? Court, I think. Circuit Court said that a land patent of the United States is quasi-judicial tribunal. The Land Department, which the government has entrusted determination of the claims of applicants for title to the public lands to the patentee, and it raises the presumption of right and regularity in all the proceedings, and it of the perfect title in the grantee. Validity of the land patent was impervious to collateral attack. Impervious, nasty. I don't even know what that word means. Impervious, not allowing fluid to pass through. No air can flow through. Because collateral is a banking term. You know what a bank is? Yes. Dang my tea. I'm out of tea. The bank is the thing you're on right before you go that takes you into the water. That's what a bank is. This. What is a bank? See, we don't know the words we use every day. A bank, they said a bank is the utmost border of dry land. It's the thing that takes you into the water. When ships come in, where do they stop? At the bank. They got us, boys. They got us. It's a bank. What's a bay? It's a bank. What they say on the bank of a river? Okay, well, what's that? The thing that the ship or the canoe or the little boat will stop at, facilitate trade. Say commerce. They got us. They got us. They said that's what a bank is. Every time you make a deposit, you send into the water, into international waters. You put that thing on a ship, and somebody on the other side of that bank is taking it to their country. They got us, boys. They said the word bank is the anglicized form of the word bancus. They said the bancus is a bench, or sitting in the bank is the meeting of four judges. So what's a bank? They say a bank is the king's bench. That's the thing that takes you into admiralty. You want to be an admiralty? Keep going to the bank. They said there are no banks in the United States Constitution. That's how you know it wasn't written by attorneys. Someone say, "Oh, it was written by attorneys." You can't find it in there. They had a treasury, not a bank. They said this thing called a bank is the utmost border in dry land. They said in commercial law, it is a place for the deposit of money. They said every version of this word means the exact same thing. So a bank, they say in another dictionary that the bank is a court. They say the bank is a judge. People tell me all the time, "The judge is a banker." Okay, what does that mean? Well, look. They said it was the custom of the early money changers to transact their business in public places and among the Jews. So they said at the doors of churches, at markets, and among the Jews in the. Who did Jesus kick out of the temple? Wasn't it the money changers? Wasn't it the bankers? See, y'all think they went to church and Jesus was in church. In the Old Testament, David says that his father's house, the father's house, was the courts. So who did Jesus kick out of the merchants or the bankers or the banks of the courts? The same thing we complain about every single day. He said, well, this definition of bank says it was the custom of the earthly money changers to transact their business in public places, at the doors of churches, at the markets, and among the Jews in the temple. They used tables or benches for their convenience. What did Jesus turn over? The tables of the money changers? That table so used was called a bank. No, no, no. It was called a bench, and the traders themselves were bankers or benchers. Benchers. They were in court, y'all. When they say Jesus kicked them out of the temple, they wasn't going to church on Sunday. These were court processions. What does Jesus say? He says, "Woe to you, lawyers, because you load men down with burdens, and you yourself do not lift up a finger to help them." Yeah. What they say, this thing called the bank, it was the custom of the early money changers to transact their business in public places, like the courts, at markets. Okay, they say this is the law dictionary on the word. Okay. Well, they got this thing called the forum. There's a case. Oh, I have it, but I don't pull it up. It says that in order for them to get jurisdiction, they have to have minimum contacts inside of a forum. Minimum contacts is when you go to the DMV and get a state ID. Okay. All right. So that's minimum contacts inside of a forum. Well, they call that forum in Roman law, the same Roman law that was in Jesus's day, marketplace. They say in the city of Rome where public business was transacted. They said it's the same stuff. And they in this law dictionary, y'all, they cite the book of Mark, Mark 11:15. What does Mark 11:15 say? Yeah, they'll let you get in college and act like all the Bible's not real. They don't talk about that. All the atheists. 11:15. Okay, there we go. I read it all the time. They said that Jesus claims the temple. They said so they came to Jerusalem, went into the temple, and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple, overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves, which is a mistranslation, but I don't have time to prove that. Uh, so they you go to the word back in the law dictionary and say, okay, well, this thing anglicized word of the word bankus, sitting for another word called bank, BANC, sitting in bank, is the bench of the justice. Okay, the magistrate, the guy we just talked about for the past 3 hours, that's what the bank was. They said sitting in bank was when four judges were together in court. And then they got another little citation that says the bank is the king's bench. And they said, where I started this, they said a bank is the uttermost port of dry land. That's the thing that takes you into admiralty. And then they say in the commercial law, as law, is a place for the deposit of money. I got let's see. All right. And then they give you a little explanation. They say it was the custom of the early money changers. Oh, you know about those money changers. We heard of those. We just got to reading about it. Jesus went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple. And then he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those that were there. Then this law dictionary says that it was the custom of the earthly money changers to transact their business in public. This is a law dictionary. Transact their business in public places, at the door, at markets, and among the Jews in the temple. They said the temple and the churches were not the same thing. It wasn't. The thing they called the temple was the courts. They just called themselves the justices who said it. They use these tables or benches for their convenience in counting and assorting their coins. They said this table that Jesus turned over in the book of the Bible that they cited in the law dictionary, this table was called a bank, and the traders themselves were bankers or benchers. They were talking about the courts the entire time. What does second or first Peter says? Don't let them make merchandise out of you. They said them with vain words will make merchandise out of you. They said this is all connected. They said this thing called a forum, the DMV that y'all go to, said Jesus ran out the money changers because they turned his father's house into a den of thieves and robbers. Jesus was born, lived, and executed under Roman government. Israel at that time was conquered by Rome. Who you think control them still? They want you to blame the Jews for everything, but that ain't who controlling it. They've never been under their own control. Since the days of Jesus, they've been controlled by Rome. All this stuff is nasty. In Matthew 21:12, I read this all the time on here. Yeshua entered the temple grounds and drove out those who were doing business there, both the merchants and their customers. They say, yeah, yeah, you blame the government, but did you stand in line? Because he said he threw out the merchants and their customers. Say, ouch. See, the truth is not always your friend. Sometimes you don't want to hear the truth. Sometimes you want to obey the law, but we want to be rescued from our bad decisions. Sometimes we don't get. All right. So it says that Yeshua entered the temple grounds and drove out those who were doing business, both merchants and their customers. Don't be a customer. He said, and he upset the desk of the money changers. That's the legal definition of the word bank. Jesus went into the temple, drove out the merchants, knocked over the money changers. Say it in another one. Jesus went straight to the temple, threw out everyone who set up shop, buying and selling. He kicked over the tables of the loan sharks, the stalls of merchants. You go to the Bible dictionaries on not Bible, the Bible dictionary, and you look up the word money changer. Say this is the word clips or a rate of change or the money changer or a money clipper. They said this means to cut into small pieces or to cut short. They said this happened in the court of the Gentiles. I told you they were talking about the courts this entire time. You think when you go to the bank, that's the bank. That's a bank, but that ain't the bank. They said when you go before the guy in the black robe, he's okay. He said, with this one. Yep. How do you plea? Yeah, we're gonna cut short this thing called your rights. They said this happened in the court of the Gentiles or in the temple precincts. They called the court in the temple the exact same thing. They said the magnitude of this traffic had introduced the bankers or brokers business. What is the historical source that says the temple was a court? I just read it to you. Fines Expository Dictionary. I said a Bible dictionary said that the word money changer means the thing they did was cut currency into small pieces, or they cut short, and this was what happening in the court of the Gentiles or in the temple precincts. This is based on Matthew. They got Matthew 21:12, and I just read Matthew 21:12. This is not a case. It is not the case, but it is the law. And I just read you that in the law dictionary. Well, you may have came in late, but in the law dictionary, they cite Matthew or Mark 11:15, which I read earlier, which is just another translation of Matthew's account in 21:12 that says this definition of the word bank, it was the custom of the early money changers to transact their business in public places, at the doors of churches, at markets, and among the Jews in the temple. They used this table or bench for their convenience in counting and sorting their coins. They called this table a bank, and the traders themselves were bankers or benchers. And that the first definition of the word bank in the law dictionary, it is a bench of justice. He just want to argue. Everybody say bye bye. This is the law we're talking about. You don't get to the law. The Bible says that all of the law and the prophets are concerning me. So you don't get to think you know the law and it don't end up at Christ. If you disobey the law, you answer to Christ. If you obey the law, you get rewarded with Christ. Christ. And when you get to the law dictionary, it's either telling you the truth or misconstruing the interpretations of what is revealed in the Bible. So there's no part you think you know the law and you get to disregard the Bible because that is the source of where the information has been revealed. So when the law dictionary cites the book of Mark 11:15, well, they know something that we don't know. See how I struck a crowd like that, baby, because the truth will make everybody scatter like roaches. You don't get to disregard. You don't get to think you know the law and don't end up at Christ. The Apostle Paul said the law is a tutor that leads you to Christ. You want to know the law? Okay. Jesus entered the temple grounds and drove out those who were doing business there, both the merchants and their customers. Don't be a customer. And he upset the desk of the money changers. Who were the desk of the money changers? The judges, those who worship Baal. See, they don't tell you, but they say here the Jews in the temple, those were not Hebrew people. Those were Romanized people who enforced Roman law inside of religious houses. And they used ecclesiastical Roman law to pervert the truth in the Bible. So you read this story, and these preachers of today don't tell the truth. So they'll say, "Oh well, he went into the temple. That means he went into the church." No, he didn't. I got it in this book. He went into the court. No point in history where the word temple never meant the court. David said that the temple was the court. I got it in the first page. What's the court? They say a court is the place where the sovereign sojourns with his regal retinue. Jesus in the 12. They said that's not what I'm looking for. A court is the king's palace, the place where justice is to be judicially administered. The king's palace. There you go. He said, "You turn." Then when he kicked him out the temple, he said, "You turn my father's house into a den of thieves and robbers." He's talking about the courts. He's always been talking about the courts. There's no more corrupt place on the planet than a court. They said in other dictionaries that the definition of the word bank is a table, a counter, or a bench. Okay, well, where do you go in the guy in the black robe? A bench. They say a place of business of a money changer. They call it banco. They said this magnitude of this traffic had introduced the bankers or the brokers business. Yo, then why do all these scammers and feds and people talk about commercial instruments, negotiable instruments, promissory? An attorney gave you a little spin on it, and y'all believe, but they'll do whatever to get you in trouble. This is all commercial law at the end of the day. This is commercial law versus the common law all day, every day. They said in the law book they cite where they say the bank of the sea is the uttermost place of dry. They said the bank of the sea. They got a whole time. This a law book on commercial statutes. They said the use of the banks is common to all of the king's liege, as to tie ships and boats to the trees and to tow them to and fro, and laid and unlaid their merchandises thereon. Old English. They said that's from the 1600s. They said, yeah, what does a bank do? It's the thing that gets you onto a commercial ship. that gets you into commerce, that gets you into admiralty. Well, he didn't say we were dead to the law, we were dead to the consequence of not obeying the law. That's why you're baptized so that you share in the death and the resurrection of Christ. But the law's not been done away with. It won't be done away with. Just like you plant a seed in the ground and it bears fruit, okay, well, that principle will never be done away with, and that's the law. What they were talking about were statutes. You go and study Deuteronomy, they say the thing they called the law was not what was written down. The thing Christ obeyed was not what was written down. He obeyed natural law. They say the significance of the Ten Commandments was not that they were on tablets, was that God spoke the law called Moses, and then he spoke it to the people. So the bank of the sea is the utmost border of dry land. You want to be an admiralty? Pay the bank, sign up for everything they say, obey all their rules, do exactly what they say, and you'll be in a bank. The bank is the threshold into admiralty jurisdiction or the law of the sea. I say this all the time. Every time water is mentioned in the Bible, it represents death. What's the first thing you know about water? That God judged the entire planet with it. He drowned the entire planet as judgment with water. What's the next thing you notice? Moses led people out, and God drowned the enemies or the Egyptians or the Canaanites with water. What's the next thing you find out about water? This guy named Jonah was thrown overboard into the water, and for 3 days he says he was in Sheol. Okay, well, what does Sheol mean? It means death. You get to Christ. He's already been baptized by John the Baptist, and he tells Peter, "Well, you're not actually ready to be baptized with the baptism you're about to be baptized with." What he talking about? His crucifixion. He said, "I got a baptism coming." No, he said, "No, I already John the Baptist baptized you." He said, "No, no, 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 no. That's not that's not the baptism." He called his crucifixion a baptism. What's a baptism? A symbolism of being buried and raised up, being submerged into water. So Christ called his death a baptism. What does the Apostle Paul say? The Apostle Paul says that when the Egyptians were drowned by God in the Old Testament, they called that Paul called that baptism. What does he say? What does the Apostle John say in the book of Revelation? He says, "All who participate in commerce." This hurts me too. I got this thing called a lake of fire. Oh crap, that's a baptism. Oh, I don't want that baptism. No, sir. He said, "That's for all the people who came to the temple, those who were buying and those who were selling. Make sure you're not make sure you're not a customer. Stuff is ain't I told you the law ain't always your friend." Uh-oh. Yeah, I got all that from land patents. Yeah, they said this thing called the money changer. Same definition of the word bank. Introduced this thing called traffic. You go to all dictionaries, you look up traffic, you look up I can't say another word, but you look up commerce, you look up transportation, you look up all these words, they're all related. They're all what does mer mean? We talk about this all the time. Mer, mer means the sea. Well, what is chant? Chant is an incantation. Incantation is explicitly outlawed by God. They will call them uh, incantations or enchantments or divinations. They'll say that in the book of Acts. They'll say this lady had a spirit of divination. Okay, well, all that's the same thing. So when you participate in the myrrh chants, okay, well, they say the word myrrh means sea, but it also means death. What they say, myrrh means sea. Merchant means sea enchantment. The prefix of sea. Merchant would literally translate to the enchanting of sometimes dangerous melodies. They said these songs, which we don't know what a song is. You think a song is what Taylor Swift sing, that's not a song. They saw a song go way deeper than that. You think a song is what they put on TikTok, mm-mm. They said a song is the thing they used to lure sailors to the water, and that's where they would drown. Said the enchantment, the sea would lure these people into participating in commerce to a point where you no longer know how to survive without convenience, ease, without air conditioning and a refrigerator and a washer machine. They say all of that is commerce. All of that is the merchant. They said the merchant is a song of in actual admiralty, actual maritime, they call it a sea shanty. SHANTY. A sea shanty. A sea shanty is a type of traditional work song sung by sailors to coordinate hard labor on a ship. They said the chant de la mer is the song of the sea, the merchant. We're all doing the mer. They said this term merchant is a historical reference used to describe Phoenician traders who utilized incantations and specific commercial practices to other populations into trade. It is a clever turn of phrase rather than a genuine form of magic and traditional maritime religious chant. This is Google, so they're trying to confuse you. They said, "No, no, no, it's not magic, it's not witchcraft." It's exactly what it is. Go look up what the Bible has to say about enchantments and and divination. This is a law professor from the Middle East. He said that the Phoenicians were Canaanites and that these Phoenicians were called merchants. He said the words were separate. They put them together to make you stop thinking about the word. Because if you already knew that mer meant sea, or mer meant water, or that mer meant death, and then you do that chant, what do they do in Latin? What they do in the Roman Catholic Church? They do chants all day, don't they? So if you knew those 2 words were separate to begin with, oh, well, then you wouldn't know what the mer or who the merchants were. So they put the word together, they modernized, and now you think a merchant is Coca-Cola or whatever is sold at Walmart. Mm, 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 mm. This word merchant meant one group of people. They call it multiple times that the law merchant, or commercial law, or business law, or commercial or corporate private for private people. I said these Phoenicians created this thing called phonetics or phonics. Then as a result, they created an alphabet. These Phoenicians employed incantations through repetitious language to seduce people into participating in commerce. They say you don't even know you're participating in commerce no more. They said all merchants and merchandising or commerce and commercial law is subject to admiralty. I say this all the time. If you end up in front of a issue of a contract because they don't have no power to do anything else. So we use the word school. We don't have no clue what a school is. What's a school? A school is a vessel or a ship or merchant, or it is a ship used for seamanship, or a vessel or an academy, a floating academy for seamanship. That's where people send their kids every single day. Yeah, go be a good little merchant. Go participate in commerce. Learn to. They're not teaching you life skills there, right? We never learned anything valuable. I can't tell you what I learned. 70 grand in debt later. I learned nothing. Can't tell you what I learned, right? So they said this thing called school is a maritime term. It's for those who participate with the merchants. These are the same people that Jesus kicked out of the temple, by the way. These Phoenicians, go look them up. They worship, this is easy Google searches. The Phoenicians explicitly worshiped Baal. Well, Baal is a false god, it's a false idol. That god was never real. Just like the same way these people worship paper, and they say the statute is the law, and that you violated a statute. Well, a statute can't be violated, just like the statute of liberty can't be violated. It's an idol. Do you understand that? It's not real. It's an idol made with human hands. The book of Job says it's a dangerous thing to take the work of one's hands and call it God, or even greater is to take the work of his hands and call it God. They said, "Who did Jesus kick out of the temple?" He kicked out merchants. He kicked out the merchants. See, when they translate the Bible, they put them words together. The words were separate. The words were separate. That law professor from the Middle East knew something we did not know. He said they didn't call them merchants. They were called merchants. And you go look up every Bible dictionary, and that word merchant 100% of the time means Canaanite or Phoenician. Okay, well, that's a private group of people right there. And every time you participate in commerce, they're not there for your rights, they're not there for the common law of England, they're not there for the Constitution. They're there because of a private body of law that they created. They said, "We didn't tell you to participate in this, but because you're participating in this, we don't do no trial by juries, we don't do no common law, we don't do no injured party." They said, "No, no, no, we're here for something else," right? They said a chant is a type of repetitive song characterized by rhythmic and repeated delivery of words and phrases. Negotiable instruments, equity, a court, the judge is a banker. Oh, the Constitution is really a trust. Mhm. Or all the other words we use, like school or hospital or insurance. All of those are maritime. We don't know what we're saying. Oh, no clue. They said the word mer in French means sea. The definition of the word merchant is one who owns ships and trades by means of them with foreign nations. This is private law. You're not supposed to be engaging with this unless you have an actual corporation. Look, look, look. This is a law book from the 1600s on maritime and naval law. They said this kind of naval society is ancient. It was not invented yesterday or today for the first time. They're talking about the 1600s. It wasn't invented in the 1600s. They said this stuff is ancient. They said in his day, this guy called Solomon, king of the Hebrews, entered into certain classes of society with Haran, who was the king of the Tyrians. This Greek word I can pronounce is an indication that it was already in use among the Greeks, not only by them, but by the Romans, to whom we have a reference. They said this thing called maritime. This ain't new. George Maxwell didn't come up with this. He didn't figure it out. They said this thing's been going on for ages. I just told you they were doing this stuff in the book of Moses, well, not the book of Moses, in Exodus with these people called the Egyptians. Okay, well, who influenced the Egyptians to get where they were? The Phoenicians, the Canaanites. Look it up. This is all on Google. I'm not telling you something you can figure out. Google it. Did the Canaanites influence Egypt? They say, oh, they're gonna say, oh yeah, they definitely. Actually, I have this. Let me see. They're gonna say, yeah, they definitely influenced Egypt. Set it up. Um, he said, "Oh yeah, yeah, the Egyptians got their stuff exclusively from the Canaanites." There you go. Look, look, look. The Canaanites didn't just excel in Egypt, but they significantly they got this thing I can't pronounce. It. They brought innovations like a horse-drawn chariot. That's in the Bible. What did the Egyptians chase the people of God across the sea with? A horse-drawn chariot. Who created a horse-drawn chariot? Who created a horse and buggy? The Canaanites. They've been at the forefront of innovation for years, forever, forever. They said the Canaanites brought the Egyptians this thing called a horse-drawn chariot. And later through deep cultural exchange, say commerce, the Egyptians adopted Canaanite deities. Come on, man. This stuff is as old as time and technology. They adopted Canaanite deities and technology. They said they established economic ties with the Egyptians. They said these are the people that were see, we gotta go back in time. What happened? How did these people get to be who they were? Okay, well, there's this actually, I got this. Commerce and the Constitution. Y'all remember this? Yeah. Here we go. I have this. Commerce and the US Constitution. Y'all can't see that. Just got a minute. Oh, there we go. Y'all see it now? You can't see it still because it's freaking there we go. There we go. Bring it a little closer. Give it there we go. You still probably can't see it, but all right. Well, this dude called Noah. You heard of Noah? Okay, Noah and the flood. You know the story. All right. Well, God drowned the planets, but Noah had a son called Ham. All right. Ham was the son of Noah. What happened with Noah and Ham? Okay. Well, Noah gets off the boat. He's been with his relatives for 40 days and 40 nights, just like you just did over Thanksgiving and Christmas. And he's annoyed with them. And so he goes and plants a vineyard. Right? He plants a vineyard. You know what I mean? He's getting right. And Ham says the Bible says that Ham looked at his father's nakedness. That word means raya, means to stare intently at his father's nakedness. Okay, well, as a result of Ham's perversion, Noah pronounced a curse on Canaan. What do you mean? What Canaan didn't do nothing. Oh, well, yeah, Canaan didn't do nothing except have a pervert as a father. And they said that Noah didn't do Noah didn't have magical powers. He didn't give Canaan a curse. He pronounced something that was this is natural law. This is the natural consequence of reaping what you sow. If you sow to the flesh, you will from the flesh reap corruption. Okay, well, Noah or Ham sowed to the flesh. And as a result, there's a rap song. I want y'all to listen to it. It's called what's it called? It's by a guy named Truth. EA space Truth. The song is called Click. I'll read it. I'm gonna read the lyrics. The first verse. Let's see. Click regret lyrics. Boom. Click no. Here we go. This is natural law. This is the law of natural law. He says yada yada. First verse. Where's the first verse? They say experience is the best teacher. That's what they teach us in school. I say experience is the teacher of school because a wise man will learn from another man's errors and apply that to determine what he shall choose. Every life has a voice. Make a statement with every choice. Low valleys, high hills like female shoes. But if life is just an experiment and we learn from experience, then we are not being spirit led and we shall lose. He says, we don't believe in karma. We believe in a seed and a farmer. He said, you know, the seed of his daughter. No, no, no. He said, you know, that the seed of the father can affect the seed, his daughter. He said, you know, that the seed of a father can affect the seed, his daughter. He said, yada, yada, yada. Don't believe wrong. He said, in other words, you know, you reap what you sow. You sow seeds of wrong decisions, and that tree shall grow. He said, we got a chance for his people to know that by his grace, we learn from the mistakes detailed in the scrolls. So if you run into a brick wall, it's only because of your thick skull and not because he didn't leave us a note. Right? He says in another verse, I'm not going to read the whole verse. He says, if you plant an apple seed, don't plan for an orange. He said that. Yeah, he said just because judgment ain't sudden don't mean that it ain't coming. So if you plant an apple seed or an orange, what happened? This guy named Ham was a pervert. The result of being a pervert is that your kids are perverts. This is this is all over TikTok today. This is you don't need to learn this from me. People half naked on the internet, dancing and doing stupid stuff, saying all types of obscenities. Okay, well, this is the result of the lack of righteous fathers and mothers. Okay, so this is how commerce started. So as a result, Noah pronounced a curse on Canaan. Well, Canaan didn't do nothing, right? But this is not. People say it all the time. Well, brother, I didn't consent. I didn't consent. Well, did your mother teach you the law, or did your father teach you the law, or did your grandparents teach you the law? All right, they didn't teach us that we weren't supposed to. They teach us any life skills. No, they sent us to school. What's that? A merchant training academy. Okay, that's how it works. So the result of his deceit or his perversion was that his son became a pervert, right? That's what it is. All right. So the Canaan, I think the Bible says that Canaan will be the servant of Shem and Ham, or Shem and Japheth. Those were the other sons of Noah. All right. So Canaan creates a nation. The Bible says that from one man he creates an entire nation. Okay, well, these Canaan became the Canaanites, right? Boom, easy. All right, so these Canaanites, as I already got here, they went down to Egypt and they influenced Egypt. Didn't they just say it? They said they created uh They created this thing called the chariots, horse-drawn chariots. Okay, well, that's the same thing that they chased the people of God with out of Egypt. And then God drowned the Egyptians who were in their chariots. All right. And then these people, Canaanites, were so hated because they created contracts on everything that they had to change their name to Phoenicians. They changed their name to Phoenicians because they got the monopoly on some purple dye and they sold it to royalty as a result. So you tell who was under Phoenician influence was in a commercial contract by the kings who wore purple or by the royalty who wore purple. Yeah, this stuff is nasty. All right. So then these people who were Canaanites and Phoenicians, okay, I just told you in the Bible dictionary, look up the word merchant or you look up the word Canaanite or you look up the word Phoenician, that word merchant is there 100% of the time. So if I ask you who are the merchants, you can't say anybody but the Canaanites and the Phoenicians, which are the same people. They're no different. The people, same people, the people here, the same people. Same people. All merchants, all commercial law comes from these people. Do you understand that? Does that make sense? Okay. Well, where were these Canaanites and these Phoenicians? They just told you in this law book from the 1600s. Forgot what was that. Here we go. This dude in the 1600s talked about this kind of naval society was not invented yesterday. They said this guy called King Solomon, the king of the Hebrews, entered into a certain class contract with Haram, the tyrants. Okay, well, you go study Tyre and Sidon, that's where you'll find the Canaanites. That's where you'll find the Phoenicians. You'll find the merchants. Okay, well, all of this was on the Mediterranean Sea. Well, where's the Mediterranean Sea? It is the sea that joins Europe, Asia, Africa. And that's where maritime, I got the maritime and commercial law and admiralty, all of that got developed by these people. I get anything out of this? I'm just gonna clip it and put it on YouTube. But this is all the same stuff. They said, and then they did nothing wrong. They said this is the indication which was already among the Greeks, not only by them and by the Romans. You study these people to Babylon, Babylon to Rome. I got an English law book. If you want to study Roman law, you got to go to Babylon. Well, who said Babylon? Same people. There nobody knew. Who did Jesus came? Nobody knew. The same people. These are the same people. Who's in the book of Revelation? Uh, got it. Let me see. I got it somewhere. Look, Second Peter 2:3. Through covetousness, they shall with feigned words make merchandise of you. The word mer and the word admiralty, same people. Nothing different. All of these principles, all the things you think you're in charge of, merchant, say merchant, M-E-R space. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, they say, here we go. This is a book on business law. They say these people called the merchants of the Italian city states took precepts from the ancient Roman Empire. The merchants of their business or commercial law obtained the name law merchant. They said anytime you hear about agencies or sales, negotiable instruments, insurance, carriage, and debt, they said there's no such thing as debt. They said there was no such thing as a purchase. They said the law of agency, sales, negotiable instruments, insurance, carriage, guarantee, stoppage in transit. Every time you get pulled over, that's commercial law. Liens, there's no such thing as a lien outside of these Canaanites, these Phoenicians, these merchants. The camera's backwards on my end, so uh, yeah, they said partnership, bankruptcy. Anytime you hear all these words, These come from one group of people. They say it. They say this, all of these phrases, all of these subjects of law, they call business law, comes from one group of people. They were made by traveling international private merchants. Study these people. They said they had home. They got kicked out of every. That's why they were traveling international private merchants because they would make these fake contracts. They wouldn't keep their end of the deal. And there you go. This said the merchants of the Italian city states took precepts from the ancient law of the Roman Empire. No, no, no. I read it earlier, Matthew 21:12. Jesus entered the temple grounds and he kicked out the merchants. Revelations 18:3. For all the nations have drunk the wine of her wrath, and the kings of the earth have committed, I can't say some of these words. The merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. These are the same people. This word merchant doesn't mean something brand new today that it didn't mean. Here we go. Here's the other book. They say the law merchant or mercantile law was the comprehensive body of privately administered rules and customs enforced by the merchants throughout the medieval commercial world. They said they've been throughout every major point of history. And remember, they said these people were cursed. So what did they spread? They spread curses. They said this comprehensive body of privately administered rules enforced as law. They didn't say it was law. They enforced it as law. They said they act like it's law. Don't say you broke the law and then they just show us statute. That's not the law. Right? This is the same stuff we complain and argue about. Okay, well, that's them. That's them. That's all who created it. You think it's that guy? No, 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 no. This is somebody you don't see. They said from Italy, the law merchants spread to England. Here you go. I tell y'all this all the time. You study the common law of England, anything after William the Conqueror is the merchant. William the Conqueror was French. He was from Normandy. He was under Roman control. Okay. Well, who you think control Rome today? These same people. There's nothing new under the sun. And that's what the Bible says. They said this stuff is where it gradually underwent centralization. They say London today is the banking capital of the world. Okay, well, there's no such thing as banking. You understand that? This is crazy. This should be on your mind. There's no such thing as banking without these people. We just talk about the word bank all night. Okay, well, this is yeah, what's a bank? Don't look at the Mediterranean Sea. The entire Europe, Asia, Africa is surrounded by a bank of water, a bank that leads you into the Mediterranean Sea. It said the bank of the sea is the utmost border of dry land. They said this thing called the bank is a bench of the justices. The guys in the black robes. You know who the black robes? You know what the black robe means? This is why I find this fascinating. That I've been able to learn this stuff. When I first started learning this stuff, I kept hearing that judges and these attorneys are the priests of Baal and the prophets of Baal. And I'm like, well, I don't really know what that means because when you grow up in church, they talk about Baal meaning something totally different than what it actually means. Right. So you start learning and they start talking about Baal. Well, in Elijah's day, these are the same people. You go study Elijah, you will go Google it. Google it. The Phoenicians and the Canaanites explicitly worship Baal. Explicitly worship Baal. Okay. These people would perform sacrifices, and the incense and the smoke of their sacrifices would turn their robes black. Mhm. Right, right, right. Yep, that's what. And I can't say certain stuff, not because I'm afraid, because they'll censor the live, but go search the types of sacrifices. That the priest of Baal did. Yeah, it's very disgusting. And so, yeah, these are the people. These are the same people. There's nothing new. This isn't new stuff. We just didn't know it. They lied to us. They create a language where we didn't. They said they created the alphabet. Yep, that's the word. So you get Roe v. Wade, all this type of foolishness as a result. So, uh, these are the priests of Baal. These are the same people. How do you spell Baal? Baal. Baal or B-A apostrophe A-L. Another thing I looked up, I found a book a couple months or years ago. They say that every ceremony is Baal worship. So just look up Elijah and the prophets of Baal and the priests of Baal. These are the same people. Look them up. The Phoenicians explicitly worship Baal. We can Google it right now. I'm finna Google it. Finna Google it. Phoenicians worshipped Baal. Yep. Baal worships or Phoenician worship centered on Baal, a powerful Canaanite fertility god. Yep, spread throughout Egypt and the Mediterranean. There we go. Same people. Yep. Now look, I got this other book. They said this law merchant started in England in the 1272. They showed up right after that Magna Carta. They didn't you know, Magna Carta here, baby. We got something else for that. They got this thing called the law merchant. When was the Magna Carta? 1215. They said, I don't know. I watched this is a law book on commercial law. You go into college, they say all the Bible's not real, it's fake, and all that stuff, and then you go to law, and that's all they talk about is the Bible. They said these special courts, all of them is goldsmith bankers seem to have started the use of a check in England. They said they found a check in the year 1671. They said the first bill of exchange came in 1603. Okay, remember, this is not England. This is Normandy French England now. After 1066, England was no longer the same. The common law that we count deer, trial by jury, grant due process, all that stuff came before William the Conqueror. Anglos and the Saxons say they trace their ancestry back to the people of Moses. Um, so yeah, they said in 1603 they had a case about the Bill of Exchange, and at the time Englishmen had been using negotiable instruments. They said these centuries started in 1272. 1272, a Jewish executor show a note payable to a named person or bearer, and it was in cases of the mayor's court or in a court of admiralty. Who created admiralty law? Same people. Same who created admiralty courts. Same thing. Same people. It's backwards, so I can't point. Yeah, same people. They said these special courts followed what special courts? The Court of Admiralty followed the law merchant, a tradition with an international and maritime flavor. Said the rules for bill of exchange can be traced back to the money changers in Italy. There's only one. That's what they mean by Italy. They don't want you to. They don't want to point this out, so they'll say Italy. Yeah, we know what's going on. Italy. Thanks. Hosea 12:1. This guy named Ephraim was an evil spirit. Hosea 12:7, talking about this guy named. They said this guy was a merchant. He uses dishonest scales and loves to defraud. They said, and there, this is a different translation of the same verse. They say this merchant in the first translation. The next translation, they call him a cunning Canaanite. He uses deceitful scales and loves to oppress. The next one says that this guy named Ephraim from Canaan is a merchant and the balances of the sea are in his hands, and loves to oppress. The next translation says, this guy named Ephraim is a trafficker. The same translation or same verse, different translation. So they said merchant, Canaanite are interchangeable. Anytime you hear the words, they all mean the same thing. And the balances of the sea are in his hand, and he loves to. So the Canaanites, Phoenicians created merchant, maritime, and admiralty law. The Canaanites and Phoenicians explicitly were. They said Elijah had to execute the prophets of Baal. This guy in the Bible named King Jehu had to execute the prophets of Baal. Yeshua or the Christ had to turn over the tables and bring them out of the temple for the courts because they turned his father's house into a den of thieves and robbers. Look. Revelation 18:23 says that for your merchants were the great men of the earth, and by their sorcery all the nations are deceived. We're in the end times, y'all. We're in these preachers lying to us. Oh, here we go. I found it. The word merchant is literally this is a Bible dictionary thing I got. The word merchant is literally in the Hebrew Canaanite. Is that you never get this thing called merchant or commercial law, and it don't Canaanites. It never means anything different. Every time you hear the word commerce or commercial law or negotiable instruments, they said it's the same group of people who created homeland. They said in this thing called the Chambers Encyclopedia that these Canaanites changed their name to Phoenician in 1200 BC. Same people. Um, they said Revelation 18, 9 verses by 9 through 23 says the merchants of the earth will weep and buys their merchandise. And so you got to understand, these are the people who took over. This is the people who held Israel or Jerusalem or whatever they called in Jesus's day. These were the people that took over and implemented rule over Jerusalem, Israel, Bethlehem, all that stuff, all that region was all under Roman control. Jesus was born in Roman control. You know, Jesus had to, what was it? To leave. He didn't get counted amongst the census. What does that mean? In our day, that would mean he didn't have a birth certificate. That's one of the reasons they say about Jesus' upbringing. You won't find him until he's 12. When you're not on the record, you don't get they don't keep up with you. They don't have a way to keep they don't know what school you went to or whatever and all that stuff. They say that I mean, I wasn't there. The Phoenicians are so the same. I would say they created it. Remember the well, you may not remember it, but the Phoenicians are here now. This is who's in Rome that we know now? Who we know in Rome? Who we know trying to control things from Rome today? It's the same thing I'm telling you. The people who controlled. Yep, exactly. 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 So this religion, you study ecclesiastical, and I talk about I got videos on YouTube about equity all of equity works. All of this group of people, they got all this, control all this. Now, this is not the purpose of me having this conversation is not to talk about religion or any of that stuff, but this is just letting you know, okay, this is private. This is a private group. This is a private group of people. But that's who is controlling. Who is currently being controlled by these Canaanites. And I would argue these Canaanites are being controlled by the enemy. The enemy. The enemy is not omnipotent. He can't be right. So it's a system. It seems like he's everywhere. He they say the word devil means that word is Latin diabolo. Diabolo just means to throw, where they get the word chant from. Chant is a repetitive use of words. That's why I say we don't know what the word song means. A song means a song don't mean what Taylor Swift sings. That's not a song. The song is the language that we speak every single day, and we don't know what those words mean, right? So we send our kids to school, and we don't know what the word school means, right? When we go to the hospital, we don't know what a hospital is. We participate in banking, and we don't know what a bank is. And we think that the magistrate or the guy in a robe is the judge, and we don't know who the lawful judges are, right? The language is the song. That's why we don't learn half of this stuff unless we have all dictionaries, right? That's why I told y'all yesterday, the most important thing I do is have a law dictionary, is read all dictionaries. Does that make sense? Look, hey, I got it again. I read a previous book. I found they said these they said they were traders in the book of Job, and the word Canaanite meant merchant. So you say you go to the book of Job, they're gonna use the word Canaanite to mean merchant. You see the word merchant, it meant Canaanite. I say here, I think it's in the book of Ezekiel or the book of Job where they say, okay, well, Babylon is the great city of commerce. I got books that say they know who the Antichrist is. I don't know if I'm allowed. They'll probably strike the live stream, but them last two comments, that's who they got. They got books from like the 16, the 15. What was the first English Bible? First English Bible said it. Got a first English Bible. It wasn't William Tyndale. There was a book that came out Tyndale. There was a Bible that came out before William Tyndale. William Tyndale didn't finish a Bible in English language. He was uh, he never got to finish it. So somebody else came out with in like the 1500s. They came out with a like a Bible dictionary phrase, and then they got commentary all these words in the book of Revelation. They got commentary so explaining what these and they say that anti. Okay, well they say POPE. That's POP. They already had all this stuff figured out. They done changed our language and changed the way we see the world. Nasty, ain't it? And then again, I got encyclopedias where they talk about commercial law. Okay, well, they say the development of commercial law started in Egypt and Babylon. There's only one group of people in both of these places influencing both of these places. We just read about how they chariots for Egypt. They got the market on purple dye, and they sold it exclusively to royalty. If you had purple dye on and calling yourself a king, that there we go. Ezekiel said, Babylonia is called by Ezekiel the land of Traphon. They say in Revelation, excuse me, Revelation 17, 1 through 2, Babylon is described as a woman who say admiralty. There you go, another Bible book where it says the Phoenicians and the word Canaanite is synonymous with the word merchant. Anytime you hear the word merchant, it comes from one group of people, boys. One group of people. Book that says, well, these Phoenicians, this is a law book on admiralty. Here it is. But this one says that if you want to learn the origin, you must study Babylon. Okay, well, who was running Babylon? Okay, the same people. They it was Canaanites when they were there in Babylon. Now they're just businessmen. Now they're just merchants, and now they're somewhere else. That ain't what I'm looking for. I forgot what I was looking for. But yeah, I mean that's what this. So all banking, all these scammers on the internet, they're all lying straight to our face, and everybody is speaking in presumptions all the time. Everybody is speaking. Nobody defines the words. Nobody anymore. We just say whatever we're told to say. Pretty dang good at it. Look. This book on business law, they said the rules of the law merchant were incorporated into English law by judges. You hear I debate attorneys all the time where they say, "Oh, the Declaration of Independence isn't binding law. It's not the law." Well, yeah, we're not talking about we're not talking about anybody else. People who don't think the Declaration of Independence is law. Of course, you don't think it's law. You and you would face the consequence of being on the other side of that. These attorneys are hilarious. They'll fly straight to your back. No, it's not binding. Let me see. I'm gonna search admiralty or maritime. I think it was admiralty. They said, "Any questions? Any questions?" Admiralty. Look, they said admiralty courts must be resorted to in private commercial admiralty courts. The world works by even today in 2026. That's how I know they just be lying straight to our face. Everything in our reality comes off of a ship. Every world is a ship. That's how you. And in a world where this country doesn't produce anything anymore, okay, well, everything comes from a country. So by definition, yeah, we make fun of it all the time. "Oh, well, it comes from China or it comes from this or it comes from that." Okay, well, that how does it get here? You can't put everything on an airplane and fly it here. That would be a huge waste of resources. That's not fiscally responsible, right? How does it get here? It gets here through ship. Everything you go to Walmart or Target tomorrow, it came off of an actual ship. Our the kids are making fun of it now. They say, "Oh, this is some good Cisco food," 'cause they know it came off a truck that's in a warehouse that's in some raggedy freezer. No matter what restaurant you go to, it come off the same truck. We come from the same 3 warehouses, Cisco, Performance Group, and whatever other company it is. It ain't but 4 of 'em. Come from the same place. Hey, we growing, everybody works in an office or some BS job. Nobody's doing any real we're not producing anything. The kids that are exposed to about McDonald's, they're like, "There's no way you sell that many hamburgers, and we ain't producing that many cows, and that ain't producing that much meat." They say, "No, there's something else we eating." Right? We don't know it. We just don't realize it. We just don't recognize it. It's an enchantment. It's an incantation. Been deceived, right? Like, there's no way we got all these restaurants and they all coming from all different types of no. They all come from the same we don't know how to produce nothing. I remember, I guess it was last year, I don't know what Trump did, I don't pay attention to Trump, but apparently he, like, closed the borders to, like they got, like, a tariff war or something like that, I don't know what that was. But I saw these farmers from Arkansas were complaining that because Trump closed the border or whatever, well, then they couldn't they weren't making no money because it was cheaper to do it overseas, and when he closed the border, well, then they don't have the infrastructure in Arkansas because they didn't that was their fault, and as a result, when they're not connected to the rest of the world, they get what they need for a cheaper price instead of paying the people what they're supposed to be. Well, then they were complaining that, "Oh, well, Trump need to open up doors, no, 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 no." Okay, well, this is what you get when you participate in commerce, because we don't produce anything in the country anymore when they cut us off from all parts of the world and they shut us out like Russia did. You remember when Russia got into it with Ukraine? Okay, well, they shut them out. What? Nobody came in there. People went hungry, and they had to wait for food to grow. How crazy that is? Okay, well, get ready. You right? Right here it is in the law book. Shrewd Phoenicians. What does shrewd mean? I like that word. Not that I like it, but shrewd. They said that everybody hated shred. Shrewd. What does shrewd mean? Sharp powers of judgment. Ugh. Piercingly cold. Ooh. They said these shrewd Phoenicians were carriers for the wise men. This is in a law book about the history of admiralty. Hey, like the Bible's not real. You go to college, go to school. Oh, no, it's a work of fiction. Yeah, they had many gods like Jesus back in the day. There's no evidence. And then they say, start studying admiralty law, and they say, well, yeah, no, no, well, some of it was written. These people used to be contracted. How does Solomon have all these concubines, all these wives, and all this riches? Okay, well, contract. He was controlled by nations. They said there's nothing new. Thomas Jefferson in 1775 that statutes have been passed for extending the jurisdiction of the beyond their ancient limits, and for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of jury. They said, what's the ancient limits of this admiralty thing? These Canaanites, these Phoenicians, these merchants. They said the most ancient known are those of Egypt and Babylon. Who created no injured party courts? A warrant is a maritime term. I talk about this all the time. A warrant is a maritime governed exclusively by an admiralty. Warrants are only used in commercial shipping. They said admiralty courts whose procedure was founded on ecclesiastical law. Okay. Well, who does ecclesiastical law that you the Roman Catholic Church. That's what they who chants Latin, wears robes all day, and has a church on every major. They said courts of admiralty enforce the performance of a contract when its performance is secured by a maritime or by seizing into their custody the very subject of the hypothecation. Look, I forgot what book this is, but it's on admiralty and maritime. They say these guys called Phoenicians were among the earliest to constitute in the Mediterranean, and they most likely formed the basis of subsequent maritime. Same people. I got another. I think I put it on Patreon. I sure did. Watch this. I sure did. Where does commerce come from? They got this thing called, like I haven't said it all night, this thing called the law merchant and commercial law. Commercial law is the law that governs business transactions. Commercial law is developed as a distinct body of jurisprudence with the beginning of large scale trade. Now they got this little encyclopedia intro. Excuse me. They said the development of commercial law, I think I read it a little bit earlier, evidences of regularized trade practices were known in Egypt and Babylon. They said merchants, through treaty arrangements and other agreements, were allowed to regulate their affairs and adjudicate their own disputes without the interference from local authorities. Say that laws live here. The Constitution. Yuck. They said they follow their own religion, laws, and customs. They said the Roman law incorporates already developed in commercial law. And so they no longer needed separate special courts, but was treated simply as a part of the whole. So they said whenever you hear of civil law or Roman law, well, it's all based on commerce. They said the barbarian invasions of Europe caused long-range commerce again. They said the merchants were once more able to determine the rules and regulations under which they could operate safely. These are like real encyclopedias. This is not like I found some dude's blog. These are their books. These are their law books. They said the merchant class frequently dominated the state and could enact the needful rules as regulations. They do this every day. This is what we talk about. They said the merchants bought protection from powerful lords or kings who granted them safe conduct and permitted them to conduct fairs and establish regulations and methods of enforcement. Say police officers. They said these merchants established special courts where summary judgment was granted with little regard for the technicalities of procedure. That's what y'all talk about every day. All the judge ignored me. The due process. They don't do no due process here, buddy. They don't arrest. Get out the vehicle, sir. Get out. Right? It's them. These are the same people. They said, "We're towing the car, buddy. You're not on our computer as a registered vessel." But you're not allowed to do it in real. We don't wanna hear none of that. Do the technicalities of procedure in the regular courts without the necessity of lawyers. That's what they said. They said, "No, no, 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 no. You're gonna need one of our." We're gonna appoint you an attorney. Ooh, where'd that attorney come from? Same people, everybody. They said, "No, no, no, you're gonna need one of our specialized you don't know the law, well, one will be an attorney will be appointed for you. He just got out of law school, he don't know 2 cents about what's going down. We'll call him a public defender." Hey, they said the term law merchant was applied to substantive principles that eventually emerged from this quasi-judicial activity. They said it wasn't the law, but we're gonna call it law, and you're not gonna know the difference. We're gonna create these things called movies and TV shows and, put it in music and all that. You're gonna think that the guy in the black robe is a judge. He's not there on behalf of the law. He's there for our private room. We sent him there to conduct our business, right? People say, "Well, no, the judge is the banker, the judge is the banker." Okay, well, that's where he came from. That in England, the law was administered by special courts having jurisdiction only over those engaged in trade. I tell you all the time, they don't know if they don't know who you are, then they said the royal courts in the early days refused to hear merchants, but in the 17th century, the 1600s, they reversed this. They said, "We're not doing that no more," and obtained exclusive jurisdiction. Yeah, go ahead and take over parliament. We appreciate that. Got in the book. They say, page 88. The Jesuits, born in the king's dominion, ordained by the pretended jurisdiction of Rome, where the pretended jurisdiction of Rome. Okay, well, who controls Rome? Same people. Under a pretended act of parliament, fake laws, fake statutes. Yeah, they said they were books of the law and proceedings of the court into English, and it was be enforced by such fake statute. There you go, same people. They said the royal courts used to fight this stuff, and then they said, "No, no, 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 no. Hmm, yeah, you won't be doing that no more. We won't do that. They'll be writing the laws now. Yeah, trial by jury, you won't be getting that no more." They said they reversed this position, obtained exclusive jurisdiction. They said this justice in England made the law merchant a part of the common law. I tell you all the time that commercial law is not part of the actual common law. All of this happened after William took over England. They said they made it a part of the common law. That's not the common law then. Look, and they said they abolished the requirement of special proof. There you go. So if you didn't learn this stuff, if somebody didn't teach it to you, then they not finna tell us. People say every day, "Brother, I'm telling you about admiralty." They act like they don't do admiralty. But they're not finna admit it. They're not your friend. They're not, "Okay, we understand." No, they don't care. That's what they there for. They there to get commission. Wall Street, and they there to get that bread. They there to get that bread. They said, "Yeah, we're not finna tell you that we're doing admiralty. If you prove 'em wrong, then I don't like you'll be held to contempt." Everybody in laugh at you. All this officers think he's talking about admiralty, which is only on ships. Mhm. This all comes from Rome, and it's all commercial law. You think commercial law is Target and Walmart and is commerce now. Everything we do is commerce. That's why I say if you don't learn how to hunt, build a log cabin, grow food, clean your own clothes, okay, well, every time you pay for electricity or Wi-Fi, that this all comes from the same people. You understand? They were so innovative in Egypt, they created a horse-drawn carriage, a horse chariot. You understand how innovative that would have been? They learned to put wheels on some wood and make the horse hold multiple people. That wasn't done like that before. So everything of innovation that will make it easier for you to participate in commerce, there you go. The debit card, Apple Pay, Cash App, Samsung Pay, Google Pay, kind of pay. Okay. Even though none of that is paying for something. That is payment. I said, "Oh, no worries. Just give us the Social Security number." Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's private. That's not American. That ain't in American law nowhere. Neither is that birth certificate. Neither is that Social Security. That is American. That's why you don't hear none of them talk about that common law of England, do they? No, they say we're not here to talk about that, even though that's the real law of the 50 states. I seem crazy that I seem like the only guy talking about it. That's it. Every court case I find say they say that's the real law, and every time they deny it or act like it don't exist, people tell them, "Well, that shit, they don't do that no more. That was old Britain." The Supreme Court of Texas said in 2025 that the common law of England is the actual law. So I don't know. Somebody lying. Prove them wrong. They said the California Supreme Court said the right of a state to proceed in rem is distinctly an admiralty remedy and within the exclusive control of the federal courts. That said no state can confer jurisdiction upon its courts to proceed in rem. They do it every day. Every time they tow a car, that's in rem. Before you've been to court over the issue, they said that we don't obey all the technical procedures that go on in regular common law courts. They said, "No, no, 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 we don't do that here." A charge, the word charge is a term or a maritime term. Arrest is a maritime term, warrant is a maritime term, a marshal is a maritime term, a bank is a maritime. We don't even know the language we speak no more. Isn't this fun? What else? I'm finna get up off of here. What else? What else? What else? What else? Y'all wanna get the book? Constitutionacademy.org. Constitutionacademy.org. The law got a lot of stuff in there. Well, I don't. Time to learn the law. It's time to learn it. This mother thick. Spread on this one. This has got no lie. I think it's got over 2,000 citations on here. I think. Somebody type constitutionacademy.org in the comment section. This one is understanding the courts. This one, I can't show it good because I'm. There we go. There we go. Don't think the desk is fancy. I got it from Walmart. I got it from Walmart. I was participating with the merchants. Constitutionacademy.org. Constitutionacademy.org. There we go. There we go. And then this one is in their own words. This is what they said. They said it. Don't believe me. This is what they said. And then biblical view of the law, understanding the law merchant. This is, I think, 300 pages. This is like almost 500 pages. And then this one is almost 300 pages. constitutionacademy.org. Constitutionacademy.org. I think this one is 25, 30. I think this one, I think it's like 15, 20. I don't remember because I don't have constitutionacademy.org. This one is 20. So it'd be 25 with shipping. This would be 30 with shipping. This one is 65. This guy, and then yeah, that's what I got right now. I'm almost done with another one. It's gonna be on Bible law, Bible. Yeah, yep, that's what I got. And then we got the Patreon. That's where I read most of what I've read to you tonight is from the Patreon. Let's see. Yeah, constitutionacademy.org. Sometimes they don't let me put comments in. It does not tell you what to do. It just tell you the law. It just tell you what to say. But there's not one more important thing than learning the law. You learn the law, you'll know what to do. 483 pages. I think altogether, if you add everything to the court or everything to the cart, 108.75. That's not including shipping. So it would be 115. I'm not good at math. Anyways, yeah, that's it. All right. I'll be on tomorrow sometime. All right.